Hi, Dr. McLeese here from Better Than the Honeymoon. Now, this isn't typically the type of video that I would share because I try to do some good editing and make YouTube videos look a little bit nicer as well as I can with my limited experience with video editing. But this particular video is actually a Facebook Live video that I've done in my group, and I'm sharing it here. You're going to see it feels more like a live video. It was actually pre-recorded because live wasn't working, so you're going to see that it feels like that. But I answer a couple of questions about communication around sex, what to do if you've miscommunicated, and what to do if you're having difficulty with compromise in marriage. So I thought it would be helpful, and I wanted to share it here as well. If you want to jump into the Facebook group, you can do that by going to facebook.com/groups/fullywell, and then you'll find the group Better Than the Honeymoon. Answer the 3 questions, we'll let you into the group, and then you can be a part of the discussion there. But again, I just wanted to share it here, so excuse and forgive the low quality, but I hope that the actual content is going to be helpful for you. God bless you and your marriage. Hey guys, so normally this would be a live video I'd be trying to do, but Facebook has just changed their live settings, like starting today. So if your pastor does Facebook Live for Sunday for church, I hope they're going to play around with it and see that it's a little bit different now. I actually could not figure out how to go live, so I don't know what Facebook is doing, but they're using something now called Live Producer or something weird. So anyways, I apologize for not going live, but I do have this video that I'm going to share with y'all, and I'm going to upload it to Facebook, assuming that I know how to do that. You will know if this video is playing in your Facebook group. So I am sitting up here at my office again, practicing my social distancing, but also wanted to interact with you some. So I've been a little bit busy today, but wanted to jump on. And there were really only a couple of questions in the group. And so I am going to jump in and speak to those. And guys, I'm going to upload this video just as is, even though I'm having a bad hair day right now, because I'm not going to edit it. It's going to be like it's live, even though it's recorded. So check this out. So a couple of people had questions, and these were the questions that were asked. So I specifically said, are there questions, anything that you want me to speak directly to, so that I could share that information and something that's meaningful to you. So again, I'm trying to do lives well, for a while, definitely this week, and probably several of you have heard longer time frames than really we expected with any of this pandemic. And so I'm trying the best I can to offer some live content during these times. If you have a series you want to hear about, or if you have questions you want to hear about, throw those in the Facebook group. My admin team is fantastic, and they'll let me know if there's a question coming through. All you gotta do is just say, hey, can this be a live video? And then ask your question, and I'll try to deal with some of those. So you have an opportunity now, while my schedule has slowed down some, that I can jump on and answer questions maybe that you've always had. That could be in regards to sex therapy or the sexual relationship or what that looks like. I do really well when I'm asked questions and answering those instead of me just trying to come up with content, because then I try to do too much at once. So the questions are great. You guys share those, and I'll share my responses to those. So one of the questions that was asked is, how do we go about compromising without having a resentment on either side? And how do we continue practicing compromise with a cheerful heart? If I remember this question, actually, I'm gonna go back to the post. I'm on my laptop also. I'm gonna go back to the post because I think this question was specifically about sex, but I wanna make sure that that's true before I answer completely 100% in that direction. Let me see, I'm pulling that up now. So how to reach a compromise without resentment. Okay, it actually doesn't say that. So how to reach a compromise. Okay, guys, here's the deal. My husband and I have talked often about marriage and what we see in marriage, just from his conversations with other people, me from my conversations with couples, just thinking through trends and kind of messages that we see over and over again. I never release data, by the way, client data, but we both have seen in our interactions with others kind of this constant picture where couples may find it really hard to compromise. They can be set on what they want personally, and that's each person. So that's not, more male heavy, more female heavy. heavy. It's just that people can be set on their own expectations and wanting their needs met, so much so that they have a hard time sacrificing or giving to the other. Now, a lot of times we call this word compromise, and the idea behind compromise is that I give a little, you give a little, we try to create this win-win situation. Unfortunately, a lot of times with compromise, what really happens, or what people hear when they hear the word compromise, is they hear we're both giving a little, neither one of us are getting our needs met, and we have to be happy beyond that. We have to figure out a way to be okay with neither one of us getting our needs met. But I would encourage you to actually try to do a little bit better than that. So when we're looking at relationship success and trying to feel close to one another and trying to feel connected to one another, it's easier if we'll step outside of ourselves just for a moment. So you've probably heard a lot of teaching on empathy. Who's the lady that does that so good? She's from Houston area. Can't believe I can't remember her name right now. I'll share it when I have it, but she's written books about vulnerability, and I can't believe I can't remember her name because she's so wildly popular. Brene Brown. Got it. So Brene Brown has talked often about empathy and what it looks like to develop that empathy. And to have empathy is actually to step into your partner's shoes. And so the best way to describe that, I actually try to give this illustration often. My sister-in-law passed away from cancer a couple of years ago. And so when other people talk about having a family member that has cancer, sympathy would be me saying, yeah, I get that. I had a family member die from cancer. It's horrible. It's painful. I know how you feel. That's sympathy, right? So I've had a similar problem. I then know how you feel. But empathy actually goes a little deeper and says, you know what? I don't know how you feel. I know how I felt in the midst of that happening, and I could share my story, but this is about you. So you tell me how you feel. Are you having sleepless nights? Are you having anxiety? Are you having grief? How are you handling this? So empathy takes a moment to get away from your own thought, your own hope, your own expectation of a situation, and get instead into the view or the understanding of the other person. I would encourage you to practice a lot of empathy in your relationship. And this is so important when we're talking about having contentment in the midst of compromise. So empathy would mean we're going to sit down. I'm going to get a real true understanding of where you are at on an issue. Guys, it can be as simple as household chores, right? You're both at home now. Well, a lot of us, both partners are at home much of the day. You've got the quarantine going on. You're not getting as much time out of the house. And so there can be a lot of expectation on one another that maybe wasn't there before. So maybe you expect a certain person to do chores. Maybe you expect a certain person to do any of the cooking that needs to happen in the home. Maybe one person gets to pick the TV show. Whatever it is, it can be a little tiny thing, or it can be something much larger. So maybe now you're having to consider budget and what it looks like to maybe get rid of some of the things you've had in the past that now you just can't afford anymore. Anything, big or small, the truth behind compromise is that the best way to do it is to get into that place of empathy. So speak with one another for a moment. When we're married for a while, we start to think, I know what you need because I know you, I know what you think like, I know kind of how you handle situations. But empathy says, I'm going to set all of that aside for just a moment, and I'm going to do a check-in, and I'm going to make sure I really do get you and I know what's going on. So I would encourage you, practice a lot of empathy. In fact, I would tell you, practice this with something that isn't actually causing conflict. Excuse me, that's gross. Practice it with something that isn't causing conflict so that you have an opportunity and a chance to work on empathy on something that's lighter level or easier. Do it with something silly like what movie you're going to watch tonight, or what TV show you're going to binge on if you're doing that right now. Do it with whatever snack you want from the store that you can't actually get because you're on quarantine. Like keep it really simple before you go to those harder things that are actually causing conflict between you. Get really practiced and really good at saying, hey, tell me how you're feeling about this. Tell me your thought life regarding this situation. Let me make sure I understand that. Let me check in with you before you do those harder ones. Okay. So that was the first question. Just how do we handle this? And then and how to continue with a cheerful, wow, I can't talk, a cheerful heart. Guys, seeing all these mistakes on this video, you're gonna know I legit just uploaded it after filming. So this really is like a live, even though it's not live. So the other part of that question was, how do we continue this with a cheerful heart? So how do we engage in this compromise with a cheerful heart? There's not necessarily a really easy answer to this, because the reality is the way that we can become cheerful in our marriages, even when there's difficulties, even when there's anxiety, the way we become cheerful is realizing that we're not actually doing those behaviors for our spouse. Not really. I mean, we kind of are, right? So I am kind to my husband because I want to be good to him. I talk calmly when I'm upset because I want to be good to him. If I have a bad day at work and I'm stressed out, I try to come home and remember that he's not what happened at work and show kindness. And partly I do that because of him, because I do love him and I want relationship and I want connection. But the higher reason that I do that, or the more significant or the more important reason I do that, is because of my relationship with God. And so we have to remember that when we're trying to be good to our spouse and we're trying to relate to our spouse, a portion of it most certainly is due to our relationship and our need for connection. But part of this is about honoring God as well in your relationship. So I talk often about this need to honor God and to honor one another. And one of the ways we do that is we do everything we can to live our lives as that living sacrifice. And oftentimes we think of that, or what are the things that God is calling me to do? What are the places maybe I need to change? Where do I need to become more holy? But the reality is, being a living sacrifice can be shown to Christ in the way we treat one another also. Remember, Christ prayed for us to be united to one another. This is in John 17. And he prays for his disciples and he prays for all believers to be united. Certainly, we need to practice that in our own marriages and be united. So I would say, if you're struggling and you're finding, I'm just not being cheerful right now, my friend, that is so normal, because we're human and we're going to have those moments of not feeling extremely cheerful or grateful when we have to give a little or we have to sacrifice a little, especially when life itself is more stressful. So I get that. But in the midst of it, I would say, keep turning back to God. Ask him to soften your heart. Ask him to remind you that every interaction that we have with other believers and with our spouse, and really actually even with unbelievers, we have the ability to really to honor God in our reactions. And so let that be kind of the driving force for you. Okay, the second question is a two-parter as well. So it said, how can we better handle miscommunication about sex? And then the second piece of that is, how do we address those hurt feelings when miscommunication leads to not having sex? So I talked, I believe it was on Monday, just about how stress can raise cortisol levels. And when cortisol levels are raised, we a lot of times will find that our libido goes down. And even if libido has stayed kind of steady, you can find that when you're having sex, it's not quite as enjoyable, and maybe you can't orgasm or you can't emotionally connect and get there if the cortisol is too high. So stress has to go down for us to enjoy our sexual relationship. So this means that if there are hurt feelings that are keeping you to where you can't connect intimately or keeping you from wanting to engage with one another, we got to start reducing that hurt first. So people have asked me before, is there really such a thing as makeup sex? And I say yes, 100% yes, there is, and you should have it. Don't have fights just to have makeup sex though. Bad idea. Just enjoy sex without the fighting and the conflict. But if you are having some conflict, absolutely makeup sex can be helpful. Now, men and women can see that differently because, and this is so gender specific what I'm about to say, it's not necessarily how it works in your relationship. So please understand that. Anytime I talk about how Okay, this is part 2. Now on a Facebook Live, this wouldn't have happened, but I got cut off because a call was coming through. So this is actually part 2 of the video. Sorry for the little glitch there. But I was just about to mention that men and women can see sexuality differently. It's not across the board. It has to be this way. So it's okay if this isn't your relationship. But typically, men are going to feel more connected after sex and after orgasm. So if they can engage in sex after a conflict, they're usually going to find that starts the healing process, and they feel more connected, and they feel more able to be emotionally vulnerable. Like they just feel like they're closer in relationship. Women a lot of times need to at least have some of that lift and feel a little bit of emotional connection and closeness before they want to have sex. So keep that in mind when we're talking about makeup sex. But generally speaking, if you can clear up some of the hurt, it'll be easier to have sex after some kind of miscommunication. Now, speaking directly about miscommunication, I'm actually going to share a worksheet right here in the group. It's generally one that I save for my clients, but I want to share it with you guys as well so that you can work on it today. Now, it's not necessarily going to be about 100% about communication, so we're going to do kind of a two-parter here. The worksheet on the first page of it, it has a place where you can write down different terms for sex, and so you're going to see different words like orgasm and penis and vagina, and you write down all the words you can think of that mean that same thing. And then on the second page, which would normally be at back of the worksheet, on the second page, you're going to take those same words and then you're going to put them inside this other worksheet to say if those words are enticing for you, if they're a barrier for you, or if they're neutral. Anytime you're talking about sex, you've got to stick with those words that are enticing or neutral. You don't want to do any barrier words because that's already going to cause problems in your communication about sex. But what you can do with this worksheet is sit down, first of all, get to know one another, what communication is okay and what you both prefer to use as far as your terminology goes. But then I would encourage you also, because that's only kind of a part one. So a part two would be actually talking about whatever the specific situation was in the miscommunication. So let's say one spouse had wanted to be intimate and they approached the other spouse, but somehow the other spouse just doesn't connect, doesn't get it, doesn't understand that was a bid for connection, like Dr. Gottman would call it, or that was an invitation to be intimate. And so they don't catch that. Then maybe they're wondering, hey, how come we never have sex? I'm always the one that has to initiate. And the spouse that just initiated is saying, I don't get what's going on. I initiated and you turned me down. And so these kinds of things can happen in relationship when we're not speaking the same language, or we're not speaking directly or really understanding one another. So I would say, first of all, if you hurt your spouse with the language that you've used or with something you've done or said, take a moment to apologize. So most of us want to jump into, oh, no, that's not what I meant. You heard me wrong. You didn't get it. You didn't understand. But that actually causes more of a disconnect. So when that happens and when there's been miscommunication regarding sex, I would say just be honest about it. Humble yourself. Say, I'm sorry, I messed up. I did not mean to hurt you and I didn't mean it to come out that way. What I really wanted to say and what I was trying to express is this. And then you list that thing that you're trying to express. If it's something about you were asking for sex more often and your spouse didn't really hear that and you're trying to express to them what I wanted you to know is that I actually want to be intimate with you more often and I feel like that's not happening, then just speak directly to that. Speak to the actual issue or concern or problem that's going on. Don't speak to the solutions yet. So don't talk to your spouse about what they need to do to make this problem go away. Instead, just share your heart. And then ask your spouse, is there anything you would like to say or would you like to respond to this? And give your spouse that opportunity. And then if you still feel like there's miscommunication going on, speak directly to that. Just say, hey, we're not communicating well here. Something is going on and the lines are getting crossed. If you're finding that the arguments are starting or conflict is coming or tension is happening, that's probably exactly what it is, that you're just not speaking the same language and you need to get back on target. So if that's happening, instead of belaboring the point, just take a moment, take a little break, and then try that conversation again. I hope that has been a little bit helpful for you. I'm going to try to splice or edit or whatever you call it to put these two videos together and get them up to Facebook, which is a little weird to say here because this particular video is not actually live. But I'm going to upload these. If you have more questions, drop them in Facebook or drop them underneath the comments right here for the video that you're watching right now. I'd like to be able to answer and talk about the things you guys are interested in. And so it helps me to know what they are. All right. God bless. And I can't wait to hear what your next questions are.